Ann Patterson is joining us now. Ambassador Ann Patterson, she's president of the U.S.-Qatar Council. She's former U.S. ambassador to Egypt, former U.S. ambassador to Pakistan. Most recently, Ambassador Patterson served as Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs from 2013 to 2017. And she has served admirably in that role. She's a career U.S. diplomat, veteran. I love saying that word, but does it really fit women? Veteran of the U.S. Foreign Service. And she's with us now. Ambassador Patterson, thanks for being with us. Sorry I have to call you a veteran of Foreign Service.
No, that's fine. It's fine to call me a veteran, and it's always a pleasure to be on your show, John.
I know you rock. Everybody waits for when you come on. Like, our listenership goes up, and you get all these views on YouTube because of your knowledge. Okay, I don't even know where to start with this G7 summit. Where do I go? Okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with President Trump meeting with Indian Prime Minister Modi. They talked a little bit about Kashmir. Didn't really get anything solved. But the president treading very cautiously here. As you said last week, he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. And you predicted he wouldn't do anything. And once again, Ambassador, you were right. Comment.
Well, I thought he handled that pretty well. He managed to say to Prime Minister Modi, "It's you've got it under control. I have confidence in you. But if you ever need me, I'm around." And I thought that was a pretty judicious way to handle the issue. And frankly, I thought Prime Minister Modi handled it pretty well, too. He said, well, we talked to Pakistan about poverty. We talked to Pakistan about disease. We have lots of interest in common. So both of them sort of managed to shove the issue under the rug pretty successfully.
Much to the chagrin of Pakistan, but I think the president is going to tread very lightly here, just as you predicted, and work behind the scenes in order to go forward. Because obviously, as you said 2 weeks ago, he needs Pakistan's support unequivocally with his potential drawdown plan in Afghanistan, right?
That's what I think, yeah. He has to he wants to basically pretty much stay out of this issue, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. The Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan made a statement yesterday basically admitting that he hadn't gotten much international traction on this issue and was going to take it to the United Nations in a couple weeks. I don't think he's going to get much traction there. He mentioned that tensions have to be reduced because both Pakistan and India are nuclear powers. But it seems to me, I think there are some very unfortunate issues going on in Kashmir itself with the crackdown. But it seems to me that India has pretty much won this round.
What did you think of the president calling for Europe to take some of the ISIS prisoners from Guantanamo Bay?
Well, he's calling on them to take them out of Syria, and they need to take these prisoners back. This issue that it deserves, John. There were 70,000 ISIS detainees that came out of this little town of Baghouz when basically the American-led coalition took all of ISIS's territory away. Far more combatants and women and children than anyone ever predicted. And the vast majority of them are Syrian and Iraqis, and what to do with those people is going to be a huge international challenge. But there are at least 1,000 international fighters, and the Europeans have been very reluctant to take them back. They argue that they don't have the capacity to try them in European courts, but you can't just let them sit there under control of the Kurds either. Something has to be done with these people. It's really a terrorist problem that's going to bedevil us for years.
At least President Trump going there has started a conversation on this because, he doesn't feel that the U.S. should just be responsible for all this. There has to be a sharing in it. But, it's amazing. Why is it like your former ambassador? Why is it when Trump, whether you like him or not, why is it that when Trump calls for allies to share in burdens, the liberals get upset? Why is that? Just help me understand that.
Well, I don't really know. I mean, let's be clear here. The president is totally correct on this issue. Totally correct. Basically, what's happened in eastern Syria is that American Special Forces and our Kurdish allies are stuck with these people, and 12,000 of them are children who need help, who are dying at 300 a day a few months back. So the Europeans really have to step in there and at the very least take back their own citizens. The chancellor said they have taken back a few, mostly children, but it's been very laborious and slow. They've just got to step up to the plate. And I think the president is correct that our European allies, and this was true of the Obama administration, this has really been true for many years, need to invest 2% of their budgets on defense as well.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the agreement that was made, and so the president holding them accountable. But, you know, politically, I don't like to get into this all the time on our segment, but look, politically, the Democrats now and the liberals are such that it really doesn't matter what President Trump does. They just want to slam him. That's why I like having you on, because I get a candid and unobstructed analysis of the situation. And Ambassador Patterson, I thank you for that. Okay, let's go to President Macron of France, hoping to get a Trump-Rouhani summit, he says, in the coming weeks. I love the idea. Then Iran immediately says, we're not going to talk to you until sanctions are lifted. I mean, come on, isn't that counterproductive? You can't get anything done without a dialogue, right?
Yeah, I thought that was, John, I thought that was the most interesting part of the summit, was Macron, at least according to the press, sort of hijacked President Trump and grabbed him away from all his advisors and took him to lunch and talked to him about Foreign Minister Zarif coming to France. And the president apparently said, okay. And so Zarif came. The president made it very clear in his press conference with Macron that he would welcome a dialogue with Iran. He wasn't trying to overthrow their government. He knew lots of Iranians in New York. And then at first it sounded like the Iranians were interested, but then that comment about how they wouldn't talk unless sanctions were lifted. But I wouldn't rule all this out, because clearly President Macron has taken this on. So let's see, and I suspect he's going to work hard behind the scenes in the next few weeks. Let's see what he can deliver. I
love what he's doing, because, I mean, I just believe in diplomacy and I believe in having a conversation. That's what I do on my radio show. And again, for the Democrats, it's unbelievable. I mean, I grew up in a time where it was the Democrats and that party saying all the time, we need diplomacy, we need a conversation, we need a dialogue. And now when this president attempts to have one, they criticize it. And I just think it's stupid, and they need to get back to doing the right thing. I think a conference between Trump and Rouhani is a great idea. That's how you solve issues, is by sitting down. Look, to me, worst case is they don't get anything done, right? You're no worse off.
You're no worse off. And what's going on it sort of got overridden by the summit. But Israeli strikes have picked up very considerably against Iranian-backed militia groups in Iraq and Lebanon. So the situation in the region is not in very good shape. That means, in my view, all the more reason that the United States and Iran need to sit down and see where they can go from here.
Okay, let's get to the Iraqis rejecting the U.S. base in Iraq and also calling for U.S. troop withdrawal after the Israel air raids. This a new development. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're trucking the truth across America. We're with former ambassador of the United States to Egypt and Pakistan, Ann Patterson. She was also a diplomatic envoy for the Far East right through 2013 to 2017, Undersecretary of State to John Kerry then, and she's with us now. Also the president of the U.S. Qatar Council. Miss Ambassador, the Iraqi bloc calling for U.S. troop withdrawal after Israeli air raids. What do you make of this?
I hope that's not serious. But again, the situation is escalating in the Middle East, and it had been the fact that I don't remember, frankly, if the Israelis have taken credit for these attacks, but it's pretty clear that they did it. So, yes, of course, it's an attack on Iraqi sovereign territory, but the U.S. presence in Iraq is pretty key to everything we do there, and it's pretty key to Iraqi stability. So I hope this is just a reaction that will die down, but we'll see. Iraq is in a very difficult position, sort of between the U.S. and Iran, and they've tried to maneuver sort of straight down the middle and not very successfully sometimes. And there's no question that the Shia militia are very, very much influenced by Iran, and Israel deems them a very serious threat.
So let me ask you this: the Fatah coalition, which is in parliament, is the group in Iraq that called for the U.S. to get out and doesn't want an expansion of our military there. How powerful are they?
Well, they're powerful, but I hope the leadership will not take it too seriously. I mean, I think the Iraqis realize that they need the American presence. They have a huge reconstruction job ahead of them. They need the presence of American troops to train their own troops who behaved, frankly, very admirably and bravely in the fight against ISIS. So I hope this will just sort of blow over. But it comes back to the relationship between the United States and Iran and getting these tensions under control, which is all the more reason to go to some sort of dialogue.
Erdogan is visiting, President Erdogan of Turkey, Ms. Ambassador, is visiting Russia this week, and Putin, NATO ally, been a staunch supporter of the U.S. until recently. We've had some issues in Syria and otherwise. Anything to be concerned about there?
That's been an up and down relationship for decades, and certainly very recently, all about Syria. No, I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. But also, let's be candid, John, the Russians are back in a big way in the Middle East. And they've played a weak hand brilliantly, in my view, in the Middle East, in Syria, in the Gulf, friendship with Israel. You got to give Putin credit. He's managed to reinsert Russia in the Middle East after 50 years. So everybody in the Middle East is rushing to Moscow to kiss Putin's ring.
So how did Putin manage to weasel his way in with such limited involvement at the beginning and really such, as you said, not playing a particularly strong hand? How did Putin manage all this leverage? What did he do?
Well, he basically went into Syria and supported his guy, Bashar al-Assad, with air power. And the first thing he did was show off the new Russian army, which was not a bunch of drunk conscripts anymore, but a very adept fighting force. Mm-hmm. And what Arabs saw, even though Bashar al-Assad was an odious dictator, they saw loyalty. Mm-hmm. And they saw a superpower, which Russia aspires to be again, standing up for their guy. And they saw Russia back. And this also coincided with Saudi Arabia's interest in cooperation on oil prices. So there was a very strategic dimension to this cooperation. So several things came together, mm-hmm. and they very much enhanced Russia's position in the Middle East.
Well, what do you think the Russian objective is in the Middle East right now, Ambassador Patterson?
I think one of the objectives is controlling oil prices, influencing oil prices. But I also think, and this seemed obvious in the Obama administration, they want to be considered a superpower again. Mm-hmm. They were embarrassed 20 years ago, mm-hmm. And now they want to be a major player on the world scene. And this is how they've done it. This is how they've projected power.
So the part of the meeting then with Erdogan, you feel this week is what are they looking for the Turkish government to do?
Well, the Turks, fortunately, the United States seems to have negotiated some kind of demilitarized zone or safe haven or whatever you want to call it on the border with Syria. The Turks have been talking to the Russians all throughout the Syria crisis. They've had agreements together. And my guess is this is a fairly routine visit where they're going to talk about Syria and the regional picture. And of course, they bought the Russian air defense system, which prompted a whole lot of problems with the U.S. on the Joint Strike Fighter.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with former U.S. Ambassador to Egypt and Pakistan, Ann Patterson. She's with us now. She was also a diplomatic envoy, Undersecretary of State, 2013 to 2017 in the Far East. Ambassador, one of these stories came out the other. Ever get a story that comes out and you say to yourself, well, that's odd that this would come out. So story comes out the other day that the U.S. CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, says they're not spying on UAE. Well, their job is
I saw that, John.
I got that, and I'm like, this is the oddest thing I've ever seen. Hey, here's a country that we're not spying on, and then they're criticized for not spying on them, but yet they're, kind of an ally. What prompted that?
I don't have I don't know what prompted that, but my reaction was exactly the same as yours, which was simply to laugh.
Yeah, that's what I did. I
we don't ever put out articles that we don't spy on people, and I have no idea where that sort of goofy article came from. I would also suspect that it's probably not true, but anyway, it was mostly. I thought when I first saw the headline, I thought it was a joke.
Oh, well, so did I. I thought it came from The Onion. I checked where it came from.
Right.
I absolutely thought it came from The Onion. And somebody sent it to me, and it was from Reuters. So then I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this.
Yeah.
And then I get down to the bottom, like, what the hell is the point of that? I mean, we spy on everybody. That's what the CIA does. They're a spying agency. So to say...
intelligence agency. Yeah, they collect intelligence.
Right,
yes.
They collect intelligence. But, the slang is there. But I get that. Okay, final thing I've only got a couple minutes. I want to get back to Kashmir again. We've got now reports of medicine shortages. We've got workers in Kashmir, foreign workers told to get out amid demography situations and that they might not be safe. So they're losing workers, they're losing supplies, they're losing medicine. I mean, at some point, right, India has to give the world a plan for this, don't they?
Yes, John. The real problem there, of course, the fundamental issue is that Kashmir is a majority Muslim population, and the Indian crackdown, by all accounts, against Kashmir, as they've absorbed it, has been very severe. Lack of medicines. There have been reports from people who live there or visit that they can't move around, they can't take their relatives to hospitals, that there are Indian troops all over the place. Yes, eventually they'll have to lighten up because this can't go on. And, of course, what a situation like that promotes is insurgency and organized insurgency in some cases, so people will begin to band together to fight the occupying power. In some respects, that's been going on for decades, but it does seem like the Indian crackdown has been very severe.
That is exactly what a lot of people feared would happen, and like we said last time, the government of Pakistan is not just going to stand around and let this happen. Shortages of food, farmers can't farm, foreign workers leaving out of fear, being told to leave. And so that's going to create economic chaos, food shortages. There's already medical shortages. And it's not a pleasant situation. But Modi, I guess, yeah. It's
hard to get information out of Kashmir, too, because it's so isolated. And no, the Pakistanis won't stand by. And, there have been arguments, certainly arguments over many years that they've promoted these insurgencies and fomented these insurgencies. So I suspect that would continue. But it's a volatile situation. And the solution, obviously, is for the Indians to lighten up on the crackdown. And they claim they've been doing that.
Ambassador Patterson, we're out of time. As always, we thank you for your time and imparting your knowledge with us. It's always an honor to have you on. Ambassador
Thank you,
Ann
John.
Patterson.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. You rock. John Fredericks Radio Network. This is Ann Patterson rocks, doesn't she?